Richard Branson's a gangster for sending himself to space, right, John?
Yeah, Bezos set a date, and he's a gangster for just being like, oh, I'll just pick a date before that.
Yeah, he was like, I'll just go 9 days earlier. Yeah.
So that's the start, right? Is sending yourself is the ultimate vote of confidence. And so Virgin Galactic, publicly traded company, Blue Origin, private company. And the whole idea here is they have two separate types of kind of methods to actually getting to what is called suborbital space. And we'll talk about the economics behind this in a second. But we've got this graphic that really kind of highlights exactly how they do it differently. So Blue Origin uses a reusable rocket with a capsule. And the entire idea is that there's basically the crew inside of the capsule, and there's a vertical takeoff, if you will, with Blue Origin. Similar to what you would see if you've ever watched like a SpaceX type launch. Virgin Galactic, on the other hand, they're doing some wild stuff. It looks like a plane. Like they basically just fly this space plane, and as they're flying the plane, it basically has 4 passengers, 2 pilots, and kind of in midair, the plane essentially drops the spaceship out of it, and then that kind of takes off into suborbital space. Now, the reason why I say this isn't real space is 2 things. One, Jeff Bezos and Richard Branson, they're not astronauts. There's no claiming that they're astronauts now, right? They didn't go to the ISS or kind of true space. What they did do, though, was they went to zero gravity. And so they were able to kind of hang out in that suborbital type atmosphere for a couple of minutes. But to me, this was just one of those moments where we look at it and we say, damn, it is so cool what can happen when you put ambitious people who can think critically from first principles and want to solve problems, and they can literally figure out how to launch themselves into this kind of suborbital space. 20 years ago, this would have been nuts. There would have been no way anyone would have thought this was possible. But just to see somebody actually have a dream of doing it and then accomplish it is a huge bullish trend. And I think that it's just further proof we should be encouraging as many entrepreneurs, capitalists, innovators, etc. as we possibly can in our society, because they solve problems. They figure things out. And yes, I hope they make a gazillion dollars. I hope Richard Branson makes $20 billion off Virgin Galactic. Why? Because he's going to solve the problem. Look at this man. This dude is not young. He's here floating around with no gravity inside of this thing. He's having a blast. If you were rich, you could go and you could spend your money doing all kinds of dumb stuff, or you could go and you could push the kind of humanity forward. And you may argue over how important this was, but this is just a cool photo. And Joe and John and I were talking yesterday. People that are mad about this don't understand the importance of having continued investment, having kind of the story behind it. How many young kids yesterday were able to say, you know what? I think I want to go to space. I want to build this stuff in the future. And to me, that's the most important part.
Yeah.
You're talking about him making $1 billion. He's already collected $120 million from potential customers, right? So he's already had 600 people sign up, and he initially had the sign up at 200K and then moved it up to 250K. So I'm using those numbers because I want to use 200K versus 250. But he's already collected $120 million for this venture and to take people to suborbital.
My favorite part of the whole thing was Blue Origin was tweeting out, and they're basically talking shit. they were like, your windows are small. We're going higher. We don't want. I think they said we don't want our astronauts to have an asterisk next to their name.
Blue Origin said New Shepard was designed to fly above the Karma line. For people that don't know, the Karma line is 62 miles above Earth, right? And
they went, what, 50
he went
or so?
55. Yeah, he went around 55. And they said, so none of our astronauts have an asterisk next to their name.
Listen, I don't know where exactly the line for astronaut or astronaut with a asterisk.
Well, to be clear, the U.S. Air Force and the FAA set the boundary at 50 miles.
At 50.
But 96% of
they said 96% of the world recognizes 100 miles or 100 kilometers as space.
Got it. And so how high did they go yesterday?
They didn't reach 100, but Blue Origin is. That's why they're saying they don't want their astronauts to have an asterisk.
But do we call them astronauts?
I mean, the guy's...
Is Jeff Bezos an astronaut now?
If I'm
like
in
once
there,
he goes,
I'm calling myself an astronaut.
Well, listen, if I like in his Tinder profile, I'm sure Jeff Bezos is calling himself an astronaut, right? But in terms of him or Branson, like, do they call themselves an astronaut now?
Well, it sounds like Bezos can, but Branson can.
Listen, Richard Branson is what, 70? Yeah, he's 70 years old. He's worth $6 billion. Bezos is what? He's in his 50s, I think. He's worth $200+ billion. And these guys are launching themselves into space. Do we think on a net basis, billionaire space race, including Elon Musk, Do we think that it's a net positive for the world, or we think that this is actually bad and they should be spending their money elsewhere?
They can spend their money on whatever the hell they want, right? Like, and I think it's different. Virgin Galactic is essentially a space tourism company, right? So they're doing it with the idea of bringing other people up there and billionaires. And you mentioned how many people have already paid and how much they've already raised for that. Elon Musk's venture is completely different. But in reality, like, these are the things these guys have always dreamed about. That's what Branson was saying. He's like, I've dreamed about this while I was a kid. I'm a billionaire. It's one of the things I've always wanted to do. Now I'm one of 500 people in the world to do this. So it's incredibly impressive that he's put together 2 decades of this, and he's obviously invested billions and billions of dollars to do it. And it's a dream come true for him. So I think that's awesome. I don't have any complaints about what he does with his money, but I think they're all approaching it from a different angle, right? So Bezos is doing something else with Blue Origin. He's doing something else with Virgin Galactic, and Musk is doing something else also.
I think it's bringing a lot of eyes on the space, right? So a lot of the regulations and stuff that are in place today have been in place for years, some even dating back to like the Cold War era. And one thing I thought that was cool was people talk about the climate change, carbon emissions, and everything like that. Branson said that flying Unity is equivalent to a business class flight from London to New York.
Is the same carbon like emission or same impact?
Yeah.
I mean, did you see the story where they had I forget who was lecturing on all of the ESG stuff in Sun Valley, like the Billionaires summer camp, and all those guys had flown there in their private jets, and then we're getting a talk as to like, hey, we should all reduce our carbon emissions. Like, it's a little weird to be giving that talk after everyone flew there on their private jet. But I do think that there's a trade-off, right? And to me, what's so fascinating about this is these are some of the best entrepreneurs. Like, forget the space stuff for a second, right? You have Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Richard Branson all working their butts off to try to get whatever the thing is that they're trying to do with space. But these folks are not rocket scientists by training, right? They're literally going after this from an entrepreneurial mindset. And I think that one of my takeaways is just like, Richard Branson had nothing to do with hardware or sciences or any of that stuff throughout his kind of an entrepreneurial career. But if you're a good entrepreneur and you understand how to build businesses, you can apply those skills to all these different industries, and you go hire the experts, but you still understand how to build a business, how to solve problems, how to use capital markets to your advantage. And now they've got fully functioning businesses that are launching themselves into space, right? And to me, what's interesting about Virgin Galactic is going to be, if you have this technology, can you do other things with it, right? I forget who was tweeting it, but somebody was tweeting saying that can now all of a sudden we go from like New York to Singapore in 20 minutes, right? Or in 2 hours. Or
I was going to say that the one thing that surprised a lot of people online was that it seemed people were surprised by the fact that it looked like a real plane. It didn't look like your typical spaceship that you would see in a movie or what Bezos and Musk are building. It looked like a real plane. So I'm assuming there's more commercial applications for that. But I guess that's something to be determined down the line.